Welcome to the Deep Bass Podcast, where we take a hard look at the element that makes or breaks games, the music. I'm Peter Thomas with a very froggy voice, and I'm joined by my co-host, Cody Haltom, and we're happy to have you along with us on our journey through The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. What's going on, Cody?
I'm doing so much better than you right now. It's not even funny.
I've had this bad frog in my voice for the last 3 days, and it's been awful, but it's much better knowing that we have somebody else here today, too.
Yeah, someone else who can talk since you can't that much.
That's right. I'd like to welcome William Pattison, who is a good friend of mine from my streaming days that are a little fewer and farther between nowadays. But what's going on, Will? How are you?
I'm doing all right. How y'all doing?
Good, man. We're glad to have you.
I'm super excited. Like one of those things that, I've known Peter and Cody for a while on stream and everything like that. And so it's super cool to be able to join y'all on doing this.
Yeah, definitely. I know Will as his Twitch username, which is BeardedCorvus, but I've known him even before that when it changed to, it was Stable Gear, which eventually became Stabble. So if you hear me throughout the podcast ever say Stabble or something like that, that's who I'm referring to. But yeah, guys, we're here for the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. This is a monumental episode.
Oh, this thing is huge.
Yeah, what was it, 90 tracks?
It was.
It was a big one.
I want to say it was 80 something, but yeah, we can round up to 90 just to be safe.
It was a long listen for sure. And that was even the one I found was the shorter one of the two. The other one had every single sound effect also included in the game, which were 4 to 6 seconds long. That was a pain in the butt.
Yeah, we really didn't need any of those. Hell, we got some of those on this soundtrack, and we didn't need those, like the get item tracks and that kind of thing. This was more of a refresher than it was an actual listen.
Yeah, I agree. I think I knew this soundtrack probably the most out of every game we've done so far. It's one of those games that I play almost yearly at this point. I knew more or less what I was going to pick going in, but it was nice to reaffirm and relive it as I went through.
Yeah, I don't have a easy access to the game unless you're set up an emulator and all that. But yeah, it's definitely a game that I have gone back to throughout growing up from teenager to adult and everything like that. It's just such a fun game.
We're going to get into it a little bit with the history, but there's a reason why it makes greatest video game of all time, top favorite list. It's got some of the highest ratings on Metacritic and stuff like that, I think, of all time. It's insane how renowned this game is, but Nintendo's been known for having franchises that rock the gaming world, and Ocarina of Time was really that big title that we all kind of saw it from.
Yeah, it was something that was really brand new to that console. I know on PlayStation and stuff like that, your Final Fantasies and that kind of thing. This was a massive game for Nintendo and also just on this system in particular.
Yeah, I think it just, when it came out, it hit at just the right perfect time for Nintendo and just, and gaming in general, for it to just make such a huge impact in so many people.
I could sit here and go on about why this was the right place, right time kind of thing. But I think we cover a lot of that in the history, and in an effort to save my voice for the rest of the episode, Cody said he's going to take the helm on this. So Cody, I'll hand it off to you, man. Let's hear about the history of Ocarina of Time.
I agreed to it before I realized that there was a book that was written out in front of me.
I'm sorry, man. There were so many good details. I couldn't leave anything out.
The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is an action-adventure game developed and published by Nintendo for the Nintendo 64. It was released in Japan and North America in November of 1998 and in PAL regions the following month. Ocarina of Time is the fifth game in the Legend of Zelda series and the first one with 3D graphics. Ocarina of Time received widespread approval from critics and consumers and won several awards and accolades. It has been widely cited as one of the greatest video games of all time, with numerous publications ranking it as the greatest video game ever made. It was commercially successful with more than 7 million copies sold worldwide. Ocarina of Time's music was written by Koji Kondo, the composer in charge for most of the Legend of Zelda series. In addition to characters having musical themes, areas of Hyrule are also associated with pieces of music. This has been called leitmotif in reverse. Instead of music announcing an entering character, it now introduces stationary environment as the player approaches. In some locations, the music is a variation of a ocarina tune the player learns related to that area. Beyond providing a backdrop of the setting, music plays an integral role in gameplay. The button layout of the Nintendo 64 controller resembles the holes of ocarinas in the game, and players must learn to play several songs to complete the game. Kondo said that creating distinct themes on the limited scale was a quote-unquote major challenge, but feels that the end result is very natural. The popularity of the Ocarina of Time led to an increase in Ocarina sales. A direct sequel, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, was released in 2000. In the early 2000s, Ocarina of Time was released as part of the Legend of Zelda Collector's Edition promotional disc for the Nintendo GameCube and for the iQube player in China. An enhanced version of the game for the 3DS titled The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D was released in 2011. Both versions feature Master Quest, an alternate version of the game including new puzzles and increased difficulty.
Hey, you did it.
Yay! That wasn't painful at all.
That was a mouthful. But like I said, this is one of those games where there's so much rich history behind it that you can't really exclude any of that. I even pared that down. It was, I don't know, maybe a third longer. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, I know you did the best that you could with that.
Like I said, tons of history there, and there's many ways to play this game. And honestly, I feel like if you haven't played Ocarina of Time at all, then I would encourage you to find a way to do so. I think the easiest way right now is the 3DS 3D remake. I don't know. Did the Wii/Wii U get the virtual console version?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't ever remember playing it on the Wii.
Yeah, I'm
too.
Right. You know, I tried to wipe the virtual console history from my brain because of how badly it was executed.
Yeah.
But I don't recall. So what I want to know is everybody's history now of the game itself. So tell me a little bit about the first time you played it, what your exposure was to it. And we'll start with you, Will. Go ahead and tell me a little bit about how this came into your life.
I was probably about 15 or so. Like when I was looking at stuff, I actually had to look up the release date for this. And I was like, how old was I? When I think of 64 games, I keep on thinking I'm a kid. I'm like, wow, was I really almost driving when some of these games came out? Like, man, I'm old. Yeah, I was probably about 15 or 16 when it came out. And it was amazing when I first played the game. You know, it was like the first true open world game I've ever played. You know, I rented it at our local movie place at first before I ended up buying it. And it was just one of those things. It's like you get out and you're out in the world. It's like you can go anywhere almost. This is amazing. And so I did. I played that thing and I got the guidebook for it. And I actually still have it sitting over on my bookcase. You know, I wanted to find everything for that game. I wanted to find all the bugs, all the pose, everything. Needed it all.
I can relate to a lot of that stuff for sure.
Did either of you get Nintendo Power, the magazine?
No.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Okay, I got every one of them. Almost every one from like the Nintendo 64 era until they stopped making it, pretty much. That magazine was my life. I had never played Zelda. I had heard of it, but I wanted Mario. I wanted Star Fox. Zelda? What the hell is Zelda? I won't forget it because I hated this game as a kid. Every month I would get Nintendo Power magazine, and it'd be like the one gaming thing that I would look forward to every month. They had a special issue that was all about Zelda. There wasn't anything about any other game, and I promptly took that magazine and threw it away. A decision I regret to this day because it has to be worth something now. This, once again, because I was in that age range, moron got it. I went over to his house and I played it filled with hate. I wanted nothing to do with it. I went home and then I rented it. And then I rented it again and again and again. Holy hell, I fell in love with this game. My dad eventually just bought me the game because we were spending so much money renting it back to back to back to back so I would keep my save file. It was cheaper just to buy me the stupid game. I adore this game. This was my introduction into Zelda. That's why we were talking about on our last Zelda episode why it was harder for me to get into that. Because if you're starting with this game, holy cow, man, this is a great jumping off point.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100% too. It's a perfect spot to start if you have never touched a Zelda game in your life and we're looking for a good starting point. Even if you can get past the fact that it is on a dated console and you're more familiar with updated graphics, those kind of things. Before I get into my history, you know how we said in the history that Ocarina sales went up because of this game?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yep.
I knew you were going to say that you had one, but I didn't expect to hear it.
I totally have one. I think that was off key though, but that was supposed to be the Water Temple Ocarina song to get in. Anyways, so for my history, this was by far one of the most epic Christmases I ever had. My parents had actually put this game in my stocking and Banjo-Kazooie in my brother's stockings. We always did presents from Santa first, and then we would go to our stockings and open up those things, which were usually from our parents. We tore open the packaging and everything like that. And we're like, oh my God, this is great. These just came out. This is awesome. But we're so disappointed because we didn't have an N64 to play them on. It's one of those things where it's like, well, that's okay. You know, we'll figure it out. We'll get one later, something like that. My mom shouts from the other room. She's like, hey guys, looks like Santa had one more gift you forgot to open. You kind of know as a kid what it's going to be, but at the same time, it's still really exciting. And I'm not sure if you guys have seen on YouTube the N64 kit. I'm sure everybody has at this point. I'm pretty sure I did the exact same thing before that was even like a thing. Yeah, I ripped that open and I'm like, oh my God, we got to set it up now. Didn't care about any of my other gifts at that point. It was like, I need to play Zelda at this moment. Back then, because my brother and I were both young and we had to share the system, we had to like split up our time. So I would play for an hour with my game and then he'd play for an hour with his game. And man, it was painful to give it up. I didn't want to ever stop playing.
No, like we said, it's easy to understand why, because you don't want to put it down. Even me, someone who went into it absolutely hating the game. How can you not love it? I remember getting to Hyrule Field for the first time and just having a real, oh shit moment. The doors to this world have just opened to you. And from that point on, personally, I was hooked by this game.
Yeah. And it's one of those games like, oh yeah, you know, you play it after dinner. It's like, oh, you know, after dinner and dishes are cleaned up, you can go play. And then next thing you know, it's 3:00 in the morning. And it's like, man, time flies when you play a game that good.
My parents would have killed me if I stayed up until 3 in the morning at that age.
Well, it was like weekends kind of thing, or it was like, you know, but yeah, it's one of those games that you could play for hours and people still do. Like there's randomizers and everything like that to make this game almost new. And it's crazy. The culture, I guess, around this game and, you know, Zelda games in general. But, you know, I've seen more people play this game over other ones.
Can you explain to me, because I've seen on Twitch randomizers and that kind of stuff, and I've watched it and I've barely been able to understand it. Can you break that down, what that actually is?
Randomizer would be generally they're playing a ROM, like an emulator and everything like that. But somebody has taken the game file and randomized item locations. So where you would normally find the wooden sword, you very well may find the Hylian shield or a fire tunic or whatever. It's a completely randomized seed on item locations. It's no longer just go to this, you know what's going to be in the chest, get a key for the water temple in the forest temple kind of thing or whatever. It's completely randomized item locations.
Okay, so Master Quest just on steroid.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned the speedrunning community quite a few times on our podcast. I would argue that the randomizer community is equally as present in the video gaming world just for that reason. I mean, it allows you to sequence break so much stuff. Like Will was saying, you could end up with the key or all of the medallions while you're still young Link and end up going in. I don't know if that's true because, you know, there's some things that they still have to kind of follow as far as not glitching the game to the point where it's broken. But things like that can happen. I've seen a lot of Final Fantasy randomizers. Actually, Anna Marie and Chris over at RP Gamer, they do Final Fantasy IV randomizer runs. So it's really cool to see. They take games that are Final Fantasy IV, for example, is normally a 40 to 60 hour game, depending on how well you know it. And they can shorten it down to an hour and a half, 2 hours, because they've gotten the right items at the right times and are able to go and beat the end boss. It's really cool. Before we get into the music, I do have one other point I wanted to note about this. So I know that whenever the N64 came out and it was a big thing and we're moving into 3D and stuff, and I saw the trailers for this on television for the first time, I remember thinking to myself, and it was the first time I ever thought this as a kid, was, man, graphics will never get better than this. Like, did you guys ever feel that way whenever you saw the next generation? And it's just like, holy cow, I'm blown away by how good Link's pointy nose looks.
Yeah, for me, the N64 first entry to 3D gaming, like a three-dimensional space. You can move the camera up and around in all directions around Link and see where he was looking. And yeah, and I thought it was like, this is crazy. It's not getting any better than this.
I didn't think that about this generation. I don't think. I think, well, maybe a little bit, you know, as a kid playing Mario, stretching out his nose, you know, and that being kind of a tech demo for the system and what it was able to do. I don't remember getting that way about that particular system, but I do remember later on, I think it was the jump from PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3 and the Xbox, where the differences became much more subtle. So I'll say probably around the GameCube was when I finally got that feeling, because ever since then, it's just been like minor upgrades to like texture patterns. You know, now we're down to ray tracing, which is awesome, but stuff like it's in the details now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Cool. Well, all right. Then without further ado, we're going to go ahead and kick off the music. So just as a heads up to our listeners, because we have an extra person on the podcast this time, our lists can be a little bit convoluted. So I'm trying to approach this in an order that makes sense so that the music's not all over the place. What we're going to do is basically go through our lists generally in the order that we have them. In rare cases, though, there are some that are not. So if you don't hear somebody's number 5 right away or number 3 right away or something like that, don't be alarmed. We'll probably get to it. It's just covered a little bit later. We did have some overlap. Some of them lined up identically. Some of them were top of the list to bottom of the list. So it'll be cool to talk about how that all goes. With that being said, we're going to start with Cody's number 5. Cody, kick us off, man.
Number 5 for me is going to be Goron City. This is an odd track in many ways. This takes place when you are, spoilers, in Goron City. What's odd about that is that Goron City is located on Death Mountain, and that's what makes it kind of not belong. However, when you think about who the Goron people are, this track is perfect. Gorons are these unintelligent, rock-eating, potato-looking guys. All they care about is how tasty their rocks are. They speak to you seemingly like they don't fully understand the language. It's 99% percussion, so why wouldn't I like it? This is just a dopey little track for these dopey little rock dudes.
I sat and stared at this track for a while. I wanted to put it on, but I didn't ultimately. I almost regret not, because it's a funky track. It's got kind of this nice little groovy beat to it. And like you said, it's driven by the percussion a lot. And I actually really love the Goron people. They're introduced here, right? This is the first time we ever see them. And every iteration of them, I just really enjoy them. This song fits the area really well, and it's almost tribal in nature, and the way that they live and the tapestries on the walls, it feels all very tribal.
Yeah, y'all basically covered what it is, entering Goron City and everything like that. Yeah, they're very much of a sit and relax kind of race. I got, they're very content just chilling in their Death Mountain, relaxing. They got their rocks. What else do they really need?
All right, Peter, why don't you tell us about your number 5?
Sure will. And it's a good one to start with, at least in my opinion. My number 5 is Hyrule Field. There's so much I love about this song being my intro song, even if it is number 5. There are a few songs, barring maybe some from Wind Waker, that make you feel like you're out in a completely open area and able to explore just absolutely anywhere. And in reality, you can't, right? The limitations of the hardware wouldn't have let you do that. This isn't Breath of the Wild. With this song, you feel like you can do just about anything. This is also one of the longer tracks on the list, with so many elements that make up what it is all throughout the different parts. It's like a minute and a half to 2 minutes, and then it switches over, and it's another part of this epic adventure that you get. The one way that I summarized Hyrule Field was that it feels like an invitation to explore Hyrule.
Yeah, personally, I love this track. I love it so much that it is my number 4, actually. This is a very long track, like Peter said, but it should be. Hyrule Field is a huge part of this game. You hear this track most consistently throughout your journey. It's a track that is full of adventure and exploration. I couldn't count the hours that I've listened to this track while blowing up every boulder I could find and rolling into every tree looking for items. Despite that, though, this track hasn't gotten old 21 years later.
Yeah, it's very much like, I feel like when you first come out and you see Hyrule Field for the first time. It's a very light song, I guess, but yet energetic because, I mean, you spend a lot of your time in Hyrule Field just getting from point A to point B. Like Cody just said, it doesn't ever really get boring. It's just a good track. And the way they did Hyrule Field with how open it was, like Peter just mentioned, it makes you feel like you can go any place, but you really can't. The way that they designed Hyrule Field is just such a big open place. It's like, oh, I can run over there or there or there. And it's just a song that just you don't feel like as you're going places is like, oh, great, I have to listen to this again.
You're right. Something that you were talking about, because we're all saying, and we all agree, this is a huge open area. Honestly, looking back, there really wasn't much in there other than like the trees and rocks and, Lon Lon Ranch just stuck right in the middle of the stupid thing. But yeah, I mean, it's a great character in this game.
Honorable shout out to the morning sunrise part of it. Whenever you are out long enough to hear that part come up, it didn't make any of our lists, but it still is worth mentioning because it kind of ties into Hyrule Field. When Will was talking about the very light and, you come out of this dark forest where you spend the beginning part of your game and it opens up into this bright open world. And it's a phenomenal track. It's a shame that we cannot put it higher, but there's better songs to come. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Will to talk about his number 4.
So my number 4 is Zoran's Domain. Making this list, when Peter told me to make a list of my top 5, I was like, man, this is going to be hard. There's not a bad song on this entire soundtrack. Having to whittle it down to 5 is really hard. But Zora's Domain, I feel like when you first enter, you hear the steel drums and everything like that of it. It makes me think of a cave. Like if you could sit there and just close your eyes and listen to it, it makes me think of like a cave. There's stalactites and stalagmites and there's water dripping everywhere. It's very just a surreal feeling, I guess you could say. But yet the Zorons are very studious and, where like Cody was talking about, the Gorons are very simple people with the rocks and they're content with that. Whereas those Zorons are the guards stand at attention. They're very proper. They have their way of doing things. And it's just the music, I feel like encapsulates that very well and yet still being relaxing in a way.
Yeah, I think the Zora people they're sophisticated, right? It's like you said, they're polar opposites to the Gorons, who are simple-minded. They live in their little area and they want to kind of keep to themselves. The Zora are a little bit different. They still kind of keep to their own people, but they speak more intelligently. They want to interact with Link. They provide a lot more knowledge and feedback about even the world and the going-ons of Hyrule. I have this on my list too. This is my number 4 as well. I agree. This song is very tranquil and serene. The area itself, there's a lot that I don't like, but the music is just not one of those things. With the mention of the steel drums, I get really tropical vibes when I hear this. It's the combination of those steel drums and even the djembe that plays in the background with a little bit of the shakers that pop in as well. The Zora are an aquatic people if you have not played the game, and the song does its job well, letting you know that. It feels like an aquatic type of area. At least for me, it did. The only thing that would make this perfect is if I wasn't horribly reminded of Jabu Jabu and his damn belly every time I heard it.
Same.
Yeah, I can totally get that. One thing I wanted to note that Stabble had said at the very beginning of what his thoughts were was, welcome to the hell that is Deep Bass, whittling down your favorite tracks to only talk about 5. Because now you understand, like, it's a painful experience trying to pick these. This almost made my list. It was on it for a little bit. The only reason why it didn't is I love the beginning of this song. Those notes that kind of introduce you to Zora's domain. It's the second part of it, pretty much everything after that, that I still like, I enjoy, but isn't as good as that start of track is. And I don't know why that is for me. But yeah, it's still a beautiful track. It does sum up the environment. A lot of these, all you have to do is listen to it and close your eyes, or listen to the track and close your eyes, and you'll know where you are. The music does a really good job of telling you that, and this is a prime example of that.
It's interesting that you didn't like the second part of it, but I get it. Something about this soundtrack is that there's a lot of different parts to the longer songs. So if you listen to them, the first half doesn't sound as the same as the second half. Or in Hyrule Field's example, you know, there's like almost 4 different segments to it. So Kondo did a great job with creating 2 different melodies and mashing them together to make one holistic song. And I think I really appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He knocked it out of the park, as always.
Right. As far as whittling down songs, I would argue that it's not that there's not any bad songs on this soundtrack. It's that we had to pick from 85 or 90 or whatever.
Yeah.
Right,
the joys
Cody.
of podcasting.
Yeah. All right, Cody, go ahead and kick us into your number 3.
My number 3 is Zelda's theme. I mean, how could I not pick this, right? We have heard this theme all over this soundtrack up to this point, and it's easy to understand why. Zelda is our princess, and we love her dearly. Throughout the game, she is really a beacon of hope for Link and for us as players. Anytime you hear this track, it instantly calms you down and reminds you that everything is going to be okay. It's just beautiful. There really isn't another way to describe it.
It's definitely a very pretty song. I mean, I'm trying to think of a good way to do it because it's actually number 2 on my list. I just remember getting, once you get past all the guards, sneaking into the castle, doing all this, and you see a little kid Zelda, and she's going to have such a big role in it, obviously, because, it's Princess Zelda. Seeing her as a little kid and she's looking through the window and everything like that. And it's such a moment in this game. And then the wind instruments and the strings kick in and everything like that. When you meet her for the first time, I find it also very relaxing just to listen to the song. it's very melodic, I guess, and it's very just, it's a very regal song, if I had to pick a word to describe it.
So this did not end up on my list, but I believe it did in the Link to the Past episode when we talked about it then. So hint, hint, nudge, nudge. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, go back and listen to it. But there's nothing wrong with the track as to why it didn't make it on my list, right? It is the staple song. It's established in A Link to the Past and carries on for the rest of the games going forward. It's what they use to identify that Zelda is present. One of the things that I really liked about your notes, Will, was that the memory of sneaking past the guards and seeing her for the first time. She's looking out a window and she turns around and she tells you, I've dreamt of seeing you this whole time. I knew that you were coming, and so on and so forth. It not only has this sense of regality and nobility that comes with her, but it also has a little bit of that mysticism that she carries. It lets you know that Zelda's not just a princess. There's something special about her. You later find out that she's part of the Triforce and what makes that trio together. She's wisdom, right? This song complements her very well. And I think, it does a great job establishing her as an identity and as the iconic figure, despite what people may think that Link is actually Zelda. This is the Legend of Zelda. This is her legend, the thing that she has put together or has seen coming, and it's all about her, right? Even though Link is the one who is doing all the adventuring and stuff like that, everything really revolves around Zelda.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because, honestly, throughout any Legend of Zelda game, she's barely in them. She's our motivation or our quest giver to kind of get you on your way, even in a Wind Waker where they do it pretty cleverly, but I'm not going to talk about that just yet. We might cover that episode eventually. But no, it always has been her story. And I don't hate on people who don't know the difference because, if you didn't play the game and understood it, then you wouldn't know. But no, this whole thing is her adventure and her story just facilitated through Link.
Yeah, like as y'all were saying, it's Zelda. She's literally the title of the series. So I feel like she has a very omnipresence in the games. Yeah, in any of them. Is like, yeah, you may not see her very often, like she's a quest giver or an end point to the game. It's like, you're trying to get to Zelda, whether you've already seen her once or twice or whatever. But yeah, she's almost like a omnipresent in Ocarina of Time or in any of the Zelda games for that.
All right, Peter, tell me about your number 2.
My number 2 is the Forest Temple. And this is where things get a little wonky because I know it's on all 3 of our lists, but where they fall, that's going to be interesting to talk about. For the Forest Temple, I cannot tell you how much this song creeps me the F out. Every single time I play this game, there's 2 things I dread about. I should say 3 things I dread about this game. It's the Redeads, it's the Shadow Temple, and it's the Forest Temple. With the movement into a 3D environment, everything feels a lot more real. I know the graphics aren't the greatest nowadays, but back then, this is the stuff of nightmares. The thing about this track, though, is that it's also really beautiful, and that's why it ended up so high on my list. It creates such a great atmosphere inside of this temple that it's almost unmatched by any of the other temple songs. The Forest Temple is one of the darkest dungeons that you'll explore. I think probably second to maybe the Shadow Temple. And this song only serves to amplify the fear and tension that you feel as you explore it. This is another song that you have to listen to with headphones because the way the music dances back and forth, it's the bones that make up kind of the percussion. Where it starts getting really creepy is the distortion that happens at about 1 minute and 5 seconds in. And it's so off and plays in a weird key that you just feel completely unsettled by it.
This is unsettling to you, but you're okay with the water temple. Got it. That's my big takeaway from what you just said.
The water temple's not creepy. It's just a pain in the ass.
That's true, but I hate it more than I do this temple. This is my number 2 as well. Everyone knew this was going on my list, right? This is my favorite temple music in this game. In the game, the forest temple is hidden deep in the woods and largely falling apart and being reclaimed by nature. You're walking through this eerie environment, trying to solve its puzzle so you can obtain the forest medallion. I think that this track pairs with the gameplay really, really well. Obviously, it had me with the percussion right away, but the other instruments create a really creepy kind of vibe to it. It's a hauntingly beautiful track to me.
Yeah. And it's actually on my list. It's my number 5.
Shame.
And
dare you? Okay.
Originally,
dare you?
Originally, it wasn't even on my list. I had Lon Lon Ranch as my number 5.
I wanted to mention that too. I wanted to say something. I forgot about it, but barring the fact that it's number 5 on your list, we'll let that part slide. But the fact that it fought with Lon Lon Ranch is what kills me.
I know. And then I was listening to it again, and I was like, yeah. And it made me think of the game, and it was like, for me, this was like the first part of the game when you're Kid Link and everything like that, getting all the gems. Fuck, I'm super bad. I can't think of what they're actually called.
The medallions.
No, medallions is what you get for adult Link. The Firestone,
spiritual stones.
Spiritual stones. God dang it. Yes, thank you. Getting those, I feel like that's kind of tutorial-esque kind of thing. But then, like, you're adult Link, and you see what has happened to Hyrule. And usually the Forest Temple is the first one you go to. And I feel like it's the first challenge as adult Link. You now have the Master Sword. You have like this great weight on your shoulder of having to find the Sage medallions. And like Peter said, it is a creepy song. It's very well done. It's creepy. It fits very well in this temple.
Okay, so I have a question, and this is not me joking around. Did anybody else get the 3 spiritual stones and you're walking up to the Temple of Time? Did anyone else think that it was the end of the game? Because I did.
I did not, only because I was familiar with the formula. So this makes sense that you would think that, Cody, because you had not played Link to the Past until pretty recently. But this is actually a pretty tried and true formula for The Legend of Zelda. There's always a precursor set of dungeons that you complete, and then you go to like the bigger adventure, so to speak. So in Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time, they did the same thing. It was 3 pendants, then 7 crystals. And then in Ocarina of Time, it was 3 spiritual stones, and then 6 dungeons or 5 dungeons. I forget. I think you get one of the medallions for free from the Light Sage. And Wind Waker, they do it the same thing. You get 2 parts of something, and then you have to sail the whole friggin' sea to find 8 parts of the Triforce. And so it's a pretty tried and true formula. But for me, it was no surprise that there was still plenty more game after that.
That blew my mind. Because, I mean, yeah, you go to the inventory screen or whatever the hell you want to call it, and there's spots there for the medallions. And I just thought, oh, well, that's just crap I haven't found yet, kind of like the pose or something like that. I didn't realize that I had a whole nother game essentially to go through, and waking up as adult Link was such a joy because I didn't want the game to end yet.
Yeah. And talking about Temple of Time and everything, it was like that almost made my list as well, because it's a very grand song. When you get in there, it's like, this is a very important place. It's the Temple of Time. Just the way that they did the song and everything like that was really pretty, really good.
Do you guys remember that walk? The big walk when you go up, place the stones? Oh, man. Yeah. Talk about chills. That door opens up and you see the Master Sword sitting there with that beam of light coming in from the window. It's just like, holy cow, shit's about to get real.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like, it does give you the option to run, but as players, we always do the walk. Why do we do the walk? It's like this. We can get there, hell, 3 seconds, less than that, but we all kind of respect what the Master Sword is, and we do the slow walk like we're paying our final respects or something, because it is such a sacred place. I mean, hell, when was the last time before Link opens it in this game? When was the last time that thing was open? Do we know?
Oh man, the Zelda timeline is a thing unto itself.
Yes, it is.
I don't know, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say, hold thoughts on the timeline, because I do want to cover that a little bit at the end of this. We'll get to that for sure.
All right, then let's continue on with, I'm not sure who's next anymore.
It's actually going to be you. We're going to be covering your number one and a song that both Stabble and I have on our list as well. So let's hear it.
Yeah, it is on your list, just way too far down. Mine is Gerudo Valley. Who decided to invite Santana to Hyrule? Man, this track is good. Going into this episode, this was not on my list at all. But going back and listening to this again, I remembered how great this track is. The guitar and the trumpet are really what make this track special, because they're used in a way that really stands out from the rest of the soundtrack. I don't even have to describe where this track takes place at all, because all you have to do is listen, and whatever comes to your mind first is going to be the correct answer. This is just a really great track to me.
Yeah, it fell on my number 3. For me, it was the reason why I put it not as high as Cody, but when I told my list to a friend of mine, he was like, why isn't Goron Valley number 1? Like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, well, yeah. When I think of this game, I have a different song that always pops in my head. But yeah, it is very like the guitar, just that quick pace of the guitar and everything like that. And it's such a different scene change. You're in Hyrule Field and everything like that. And how we talked about how music plays in there, and then you get into Goron Valley and it's such a stark difference really quickly. And the music changes, and it's such a different pace than anything I heard before it. That's why, I put it higher on my list, but not at the top. But that's why I put it at 3, because it was always one of those things that is just like you said, Cody, where you are when you hear the song. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just, that's Goron Valley. No matter what it is, it doesn't matter. That's Goron Valley.
I think you meant Gerudo.
What did I say? Goron? Yeah, Gerudo Valley. You're saying Gerudo. Jesus. I'm sitting there just looking at the notes and everything like that, and Gerudo Valley. Sorry, not Goron. No, it's Valley. Okay. Gerudo Valley.
This one landed at 3 on my list as well, but it was not without a lot of arguing in my own head. I don't think it would have been number 1. I have my number 1 what it is for good reasons, but number 2 and 3, the Forest Temple and Gerudo Valley, kind of battled back and forth. I think we can probably all agree that regardless of where it lands, it's going to land on somebody's list, period, because this song is so iconic. Nintendo uses it in everything that includes Zelda something. It's just that good. But to me, it's easily one of the best songs in the game. It's all for good reason. We've already mentioned the fast-paced, upbeat, and almost exotic sounding nature of it fits in really well with the area that you're in. But the guitar driving the song the whole way through is kind of what solidifies it for me. The Gerudo people are just they're not any of the things that this song makes you feel. Like, I hear this song and I want to get up and dance and just really jam out to it. And those women will cut your throat if you are not looking. Yeah. Hell, they'll cut your throat when you are looking, honestly. They're angry women. This song makes it fun to be here no matter how many times you got captured by those guards. And I don't know about you guys, but my first time through this, I had a hard time getting through and sneaking around those people. Thank God in Breath of the Wild, we were able to cross-dress and disguise ourselves because Link was so damn pretty. But I feel like at the end of the day, when Koji Kondo composed the song, he had to have had a blast, man. He sat down and he was like, you know what? I'm going to make something that's just bold and stands out for this area. And he just crushed it out of the park.
Yeah, it's really just kind of unique. Whenever I was doing my notes for this, typically as I'm listening, I'm like, all right, this is number 1. This is number 2. This is either number 3 or 4. I typically know where things go. When I got done with my list this time, for the first time, I sat down and I was like, shit, now I have to rank these. That was the hardest part of doing this. I'd already picked through them all, but now to actually tweak it and say what goes where, that was one of the hardest parts of doing this episode.
All right. I believe we are on Will, your number 1. Let's hear what that is.
Okay. So my number 1, when you looked at y'all's list and everything like that, I was like, man, is my number 1 really that bad? Because it didn't appear on, most of ours going through this, we generally had the same songs in mind, but just different orders. Mine, not a single place on y'all's list, but my number 1 is the Windmill Hut or Song of Storms. And trying to think of why is this my number 1 over Zelda's theme and all of this such great music? How can I put this at my top of my list? And honestly, I could not tell you. It's something about the guy in the windmill, creepy. That should have been on your list of things that creeped you out in this game because he is creepy looking. I 100% thought he was going to, this is a shady dude. Why is he in a windmill by himself with an accordion and creepiness? But something about the song, I always think about it when I think of Ocarina of Time. Besides the typical Zelda theme that is in all of them, when I think of this game in particular, I think of Song of Storms. It just, I don't know. I just really like the song. And no matter what cover it is, if you haven't heard it on piano, it's very pretty song on piano. Doesn't matter what kind of cover is done, whether it's a piano or guitar or a remix or whatever. It's just, I like them all. So this is why it's on my number 1, because it's the song that makes me think of this game in particular.
right, first off, Peter and I will continue to always badmouth each other and our tracks. I will not do that to a guest, period. A. B, I like this track. It's a good track. It is synonymous with this game. So I can really understand why you put it as number one. It didn't make my list at all, but that doesn't mean that it's not good. And that's what's interesting about doing this. You know, sometimes Peter and I go into this and I know what he's going to pick. He knows what I'm going to pick. So having you on to give a fresh perspective is a welcome change. One thing I want to know about this track, isn't this the track that is kind of like Inception, where young Link learned it from the shop guy, but he was taught it by old Link? Isn't that right?
Trying to think. I haven't actually looked back at the game in a while. You learn it as young Link. I'm trying to think of the order, because the game does, like, there's a lot of times you go back and forth from young Link to adult Link. I don't know. Do you know the exact order, Peter?
Yeah. So you do learn it as a kid. Then when you go and revisit the guy as an adult, you play it for him and you realize that he doesn't know why he knows it. And it's because, 7 years prior, this kid came over and played it to him. And for whatever reason, it causes storms to happen and makes the windmill move at twice the speed. And so it just drives this dude like batshit crazy over 7 years. So it's young Link who does it and creates the effect. And 7 years later, this guy is like losing his mind because he's like, I can't believe this blasted kid came in, messed up my tune, messed up my windmill, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, he's just like, he is angry about it. So when adult Link reminds him that, hey, it was me, I was here and fucked all your shit up, by the way. Yeah, he gets even more pissed off about it.
Okay, I was just checking that my memory was correct on that, because I think that's honestly funny as shit.
Yeah, it's Link showing off his trolly behavior.
Yeah, and who doesn't love a troll?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, the Windmill Hut song, again, this is another one of those soundtracks where it's like, I could have said for a lot of these songs, I almost put this on my list because I could have. I would have fought between Zora's Domain, Hyrule Field, and Windmill Hut. All of those songs just fighting for some place on the list. And nothing wrong with you at all, Will, as far as putting it on your list and us not having it. It is a fantastic track, and probably maybe the second or third song I'd think of if someone was like, hurry up and sing 3 songs from Ocarina of Time. It'd probably be like Gerudo Valley, Zelda's theme, and the Windmill song. It is a very iconic and memorable track. And that whole scene, I mean, obviously I was able to recall it almost down to the detail because it was such a memorable moment in that game. And for no real reason, the Song of Storms doesn't play a big factor in the game itself, but it's used in very odd moments in the game. Like I said, it causes these rainstorms to come by for a few moments, and then the sky clears up and everything is good again. Just a very weird and quirky song, but I like that you have it as number one on your list. And just to respond a little bit to what Cody said about him and I shit talking one another and stuff like that. Cody, your whole list is shit and I hate you.
Yep, that's about as on brand us as we can get. All right, shithead, go with your number one.
All right. My number one is the ending credits. And I know this is probably no surprise because I've put ending credits on a few of my games in the past episodes, but I listened to this song when I got there and I was just like, well, Nintendo has done it again with another epic arrangement that basically recaps all of the areas that you've been to. It shows what everybody's doing now that the great evil has been purged and banished from Hyrule. My only regret in putting this song is that I know I won't get to put the entire 7 minutes and 10 seconds on the episode. Unfortunately, it's far too long to listen to everything. So you'll get a sample of it when you hear it, but I would encourage you to go listen to the whole thing, or even more so, just go beat the game and see how rewarding it is to see everybody rejoicing and being happy that Link was able to quell this evil and bring peace to the land of Hyrule once again. It's really hard to summarize what you see and feel as you watch and listen to the ending credits. So I encourage that you give it a shot. And like I said, if you haven't already done so, give it a go, beat through the game, and I think you'll be glad that you did.
Okay, so in prep for this episode, I went back and I listened to our Link to the Past episode today. Staff Roll was my number one. That is where, since I still have not beaten the game, you're welcome, that you told me that it did this. Basically recaps all the places and people that you had interacted with. But the Staff Roll track didn't include samples from each area. Granted, completely different game, that kind of thing. This track does. We've heard this done really well, and I'm looking at Sonic 2 in particular, where it's basically a recap of the entire soundtrack. By comparison of the two, while this one is still good, I think Sonic did it way better and way cleaner than what this has ended up being.
Yeah, I mean, I think y'all basically summed it up perfect. It recaps the whole game and everything like that. My only gripe about the song is the fact that the game's over. This is like, well, shoot, now what? You've done all this grand epic adventure, and it's like, well, dang, I don't want it to be over, and it's over. So now what? And you go on to save slot 2 and you start over again.
Like we all did.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you amended what you were saying there, Stabble, because when you started saying my only gripe, I was about to say, you know what? Forget both of you guys, both never coming on the podcast again. And I'm just going to do this solo for the rest of forever. Stop shitting on my songs. But no, I agree with that 100%. Cody, you were going to say something. Sorry.
Yeah, I completely forgot what it was, though. So it's all right.
Excellent. It was probably nothing good anyways. Get off my track. No, I did want to comment, though. I can understand what you're saying about Sonic 2 doing it better. And I think it's not apples and oranges per se, but they're different in the way that they capture it, where I feel like Sonic 2 truly does blend a full, almost like a remix version of all the songs put together. Ocarina of Time's end song is more of like you can't just listen to it on its own. It is a good track on its own, but why it really solidified number one for me is because of the experience of the entire adventure summed up into this track altogether. So that's the only reason why I made it. If I had never beaten Ocarina of Time, I don't think end credits would have made it on my list at all.
Yeah, no, and I can see why. I mean, the amount of times we've all started this game, gotten to the water temple, and quit is far greater than how many times that we've all actually beaten the game. So I've heard this a handful of times. I haven't beaten it in years, probably. I didn't even think about that kind of touchstone, the reflection of what this game was, what this experience that consumed our lives was. So that didn't even enter into the equation. You're right. I was just going straight track by itself. So I apologize on that front for not even considering. But yeah, you're kind of right. Track by itself, it is what it is. But man, what a great game.
Yeah, I think we can all attest and literally pull up any review. It'll tell you the exact same thing. 10 out of 10, play this damn game. All right. Well, we've reached the end of our music surprisingly quickly for having an extra person. I was fully expecting this to go much, much longer than that. We did good. We made good time here. It's not going to be a nightmare for me to edit later.
Just trying to make things easier for you, Peter. That's all.
I know. I love you guys. Not you, Cody.
I know. I'm the thorn in your side that's been stuck around with you for years now.
That's right. Normally here I would summarize and talk about Zelda as a whole and everything, but I think we've done that a lot because of it's easy to do for this game because we've all enjoyed it and it's renowned for being an enjoyable game and something that people will talk about for years and years to come. But I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about it, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the timelines. Nintendo has officially come out with a timeline that came in one of the Hyrule Historia books that they finally talk about the actual timeline that comes from Zelda and what exactly happens. If you go through it, it's Ocarina of Time that really just fucks with everything. Everything before Ocarina of Time is solid. It follows along the same timeline, starting with Skyward Sword and moving all the way up. And then you get to Ocarina of Time, and all of a sudden we've got all these branches. We've got the young Link branch. We've got the adult Link branch if he wins against Ganon. And we've got an adult Link branch when he loses against Ganon, which sounds weird because it's like, oh, well, Link never loses. He's the hero. How could he have lost? But there is a branch of this that happens. And I actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, I might have messed that up. I think it might be a young Link, 2 young Links and 1 adult Link or something like that. Anyways, one of the young Links I know gets lost in the Lost Woods and ends up giving you the Majora's Mask timeline. One of the Links that loses ends up giving you the Wind Waker timeline. So all the stuff that you see with cell shaded Link. And then the one where he wins is where you get into Twilight Princess and so on and so forth down that path. As far as the timeline goes, what did you guys think of the branches and what was your favorite path when it moved forward?
And I will preface this with I am a huge Zelda fan, but I have missed a few of the games because there was a span of time where I didn't have the consoles that some of the games were on. If you sit down and talk about, your favorite Zelda games and everything like that, probably my favorite branch of time would probably be the one with Twilight Princess in it. I really loved Twilight Princess game. It was such a fun game.
Twilight Princess got really gritty. Hyrule and the atmosphere in general was very dark and ominous. The whole idea of the Twilight in general was it was a remarkable change in atmosphere. I mean, even Link himself, the physical model that they designed for him, he looked more mature. He looked more aged. And you have these moments that still remind you of kind of the whimsical, fun nature of Zelda. But for the most part, this is a far more serious game.
Yeah. And that's why I really liked it, because it was the first time that I've seen the Zelda universe as truly being dark. Because if you think about the stories and, you play Wind Waker, you play Ocarina of Time and everything like that, we talk about how Hyrule Field and everything's so lighthearted and everything like that. And, you're running around as Kid Link and everything like that. But it's like, if you think about what he's actually doing, it is really dark. So I really like the fact that they did portray it as a more gritty, dark version of the world.
Okay, so I actually went to grab the book and I'm looking at this thing and I didn't realize how jacked up this is, really.
It's a very bizarre timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, think about this, because I don't know the last time you guys actually looked at this timeline. We're talking about Ocarina of Time here, right? Ocarina of Time takes place 4 games before The Legend of Zelda, which I never realized at all. And then, all right, so we have, if the hero is defeated in Ocarina, that starts the decline of Hyrule and the hero. If the hero is triumphant, it's Child Era, the Twilight Realm, and the Legacy of the Hero. If Ganondorf is sealed, you get the Hero of Winds and a New World. And Peter, to answer your question, that's the one that was my favorite just because of Wind Waker. I love Wind Waker as basically a spiritual successor to Ocarina. I love that game so much.
Yeah, I mean, I second that 100%. I adored Twilight Princess a lot and enjoyed the atmosphere. And I played through, I think, every Zelda game and have beaten every Zelda game to date. And Wind Waker was just so different. There's one particular feature I like about Wind Waker, and it's something so stupid. Because of the design that they chose in doing the cel-shaded, more Toon Link version of him, they were able to add a lot more expressions into his face. So he made all of these wild and wacky faces to show how he was feeling throughout the game. And I thought it just added so much character to a hero that has never said a word in his life except for some stuff, you know?
Yeah, I remember being in high school reading Electronic Gaming Magazine, or EGM, and everyone at my school was talking so much shit about how it looked. I'm an open-minded person. I was going to play it no matter what because, Zelda is Zelda. But I got it, and that game could not have been made in any other art style than the one they went with that cel shaded. You need a way to kind of show the direction that the wind is blowing. You're right. The animations and stuff like that is great. And the power that the GameCube was able to bring that game. That is such a good game. People say that it's really empty, not a lot to do. I had fun just sailing the ocean for hours.
Cody, you said you had the book and everything for you.
Yeah.
One question I did have about, I don't know whether it says it on the timeline thing or not. In Twilight Princess, the skeleton that teaches you everything, was that ever confirmed whether or not that was Link, like a dead Link, essentially, that's teaching Twilight Princess Link? I just didn't know if it, I want to get that book, but I didn't know if it had mentioned that in the timeline section or not.
While he's doing that, I do want to cover one other thing that was pretty epic around. It was probably a few years after Ocarina of Time had been out and YouTube was starting to grow in popularity and stuff. But did any of you guys fall for the Ben Died cartridge?
Oh, yeah. I remember when that.
What are you talking about?
I don't know if I ever fell for it, but I really did think that was really creepy.
Cody, you asked, you don't know what that is?
No.
Oh, okay. So there was a big thing that went around YouTube about this cartridge that was supposedly haunted. Basically, they said that some kid was playing it and he did something. I think he played like a song the wrong way or something like that, and he died. The cartridge was haunted by the spirit of Ben. There was like these videos that came on that showed Link's character model as young Link bent at his waist 90 degrees and running around. And everywhere he looked, there was this little statue of a Link with this very eerie looking face that looked like it didn't even belong on there. There's a whole YouTube thing on it. I would really encourage you to look it up and see. Nowadays, I believe it's been debunked that it was somebody who hacked the cartridge and did some things about it, but it was still, for a long time, people talked about this and tried figuring out, like, is this real? This is terrifying. How do you make this happen and stuff? And it was wild, man. I've never seen anything like it.
No, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, it's almost like they made Link Re-Dead version of Link. Like, it was, like Peter said, it's distorted face, hunched over, everything like that. It's truly creepy.
I know it's been debunked now, and it still wigs me out when I see that model that they used of that Link that would just slowly creep up next to you. And no, thank you.
Cody, if you can't find it, you don't worry about it. I mean, it was just something that popped in my head when Peter mentioned the timelines and everything like that.
Now, are you talking about like the big, huge, tall sword dude or somebody else?
Like when you're Wolf Link and you find, what I'm trying to remember, I think is when you find like the gravestones, or you find something in it, like a skeleton knight teaches you new abilities. For the longest time, and I think it was before that book came out, it was theorized that the skeleton that is teaching you is a dead version. I think it's supposed to be like the dead Ocarina Time version of Link.
No, I'm looking at it right here.
Okay.
Because I knew it was the guy you're talking about. Apparently, it's the spirit of Link's ancestor. Teaches him his secrets ever since returning to the child era. The swordsman has lamented the fact that he was not remembered as a hero. This is the reason he passes down the proof of his courage and his secret techniques to the Link of this era, addressing him as son.
Okay, and I think that's where it kind of came from, was, the fact that how he addressed him and the, kind of what he taught him and stuff like that is kind of where the theory came about of it was a dead version of Link in one of the timelines.
That's basically what they're saying. It's a child form of Link, never getting the celebration or the accolades that he felt like he deserved and being bitter about it, but he wanted to pass it on. So basically, that's the child Ocarina of Time Link, if you want to view it that way.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, kind of wild. I mean, it's hard to believe that all of these games are usually separated by 100 or 1,000 years. It's hard to see that because we're seeing the same hero to us, right? It's the elvish looking person that wears a green tunic. That's how we've known him. So it's easy to confuse it and be like, oh, it's the same guy. But in reality, this is hundreds or thousands of years separation between each version of it. It's just, that's how the lore has always been. When great evil strikes the land of Hyrule or wherever they may be, the hero will come out from their slumber and come to be the light that needs to fend off from the darkness. All right. Well, we've got to the end of our episode, and much like our other ones, we do have a question of the episode that we will go ahead and go through here. But what was your favorite weapon or sub-weapon to use when playing Ocarina of Time? Will, we'll start with you.
Thinking about this, it came down to two of them. The one I would probably have to pick would be the boomerang. It made picking up items so much easier when you could just toss it out. And it was great, the fact that it would, if you hit a skeletal token or something like that, it would just bring it back to you. You didn't have to worry about trying to figure out how to get to it.
Yeah, you got to use the new Z targeting that was being featured. How about you, Cody?
Mine is probably as predictable as ever. I was thinking for a while, and I'm going to give a shout out to the hook shot, but that can either help you or really mess you up depending on the situation. Something that is a completely optional, you don't have to get it, weapon is the giant's knife. Do you guys remember that thing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This two-handed, big-ass buster sword that's like as tall as Link is and is just completely absurd. Every run that I would play, I would get that thing. And if I'm not mistaken, it would break at a certain point. You had to like get it again. But I always said it's not a good weapon, but just the absurdity of the size of it makes it take the cake for me.
What I liked about it is the fact that the Gorons called it a knife. Like, yes. Like you said, it's the absurdity of how big it is and they consider that a knife. So I would hate to see what they consider a big sword.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably going to be like one of those Lord of the Rings, huge, like statue people with the sword in the ground. It's probably something akin to that.
Yeah. So just to note, the Giant's knife is the one that you can purchase and have for a little while. And then I think it's like X amount of hits and it will break into like the little stub. Originally, it does twice the damage of the Master Sword. And when it breaks to the stub, it's about as strong as the Kokiri sword. You can actually get an unbreakable version if you do the long trade quest that happens at the it's pretty early in the game. I don't want to say it's the very start of the game, but fairly early, you start picking up this item that you swap over and over and over again. And it is the most pain in the ass trade quest that you'll ever do. But at the end of it, it allows this monumental mountain-sized Goron to craft you the Bigoron sword, which is the exact same sword, but it doesn't break.
That's right, because you have to end up getting him the like eye drops, don't you? Isn't that what like the end item you have to get for him to make you the sword? It's like eye drops or something like that.
Yeah, the eye drops that had the timer. You can't warp. Yep. You can't do anything. You had to run the eye drops from Potion Shop over at Lake Hylia and get them all the way up Death Mountain without the timer expiring.
Oh my God, I remember that now.
Yep. And you better start enjoying his side hop, because he will say, yep, so many times trying to getting that over there.
I could never really get the side hop. Like I do it on accident, but I mean, I was a roller myself, not a hopper.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of rules for the eye drops. So I think if you rolled, it would spoil the tiers as well, or whatever they were. You had to physically run, like you couldn't ride your horse. You couldn't take any kind of significant damage. It's a little vague now because it's been a long time since I've done that full quest, but yeah, you had to physically on foot run that thing all the way up to the mountain.
Yeah, and I think you needed to do it as Kid Link, right? Because you needed the Hylian shield like on your back so you could crouch and it would stop the boulders from hitting you, right?
That checks out.
Or could you do it as an adult Link?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could do it as Child Link or Adult Link. For some reason, I always remember doing it as Adult Link. I mean, you're right about the shield crouching, because young Link couldn't carry the Hylian shield since he was so little. But I don't remember anymore. I don't know if you had to be Adult Link in order to. I feel like the trade quests only worked as Adult Link, but I could be mistaken.
I don't know. I'll have to go back and I'll have to look up a video on that and see how it's done again.
I'm long overdue for a playthrough myself.
Yeah, I need to find it on. I can literally turn around and look at my 64. You know, after all these years, I don't like the 64 controller. I'm sorry, I can't. I tried to play Turok one day with it, and I'm like, nope, not happening. I was like, how was I ever good using this thing?
Yeah, Peter and I kind of talked about that a little bit in episode 7 for GoldenEye, where going back and playing it on the system, it's nearly impossible to do because of the lack of the dual sticks, as we kind of put it.
We kind of went on a segue there, but just to circle back to answer the question for myself, my favorite sub-weapon to use was actually the elemental arrows. I wish they didn't suck up so much magic, because I would have loved to have used them more. I really enjoyed using them in the puzzles, and I kind of wish I could have used them more in like just standard combat. I think that would have been a lot of fun. We get that a little bit more in Breath of the Wild, but it takes them ages to finally be like, oh yeah, you should be able to use your sub weapons as regular weapons too. If you are looking to answer the question of the episode, make sure you come by and tweet us at Deep Base Podcast, and we'll be happy to chat with you about what your favorite sub weapons were. I feel like Ocarina of Time didn't go too far and create anything too wild like the spinner disc and stuff like that, but it's got a lot of the fan favorites in it. So be sure to stop by and let us know what your weapon of choice was. That's it for us, guys. We're going to wrap up here. Thank you, Cody, so much for being here as always.
You're welcome, buddy.
And Will, as our first guest on the Deep Base podcast, it was an honor and a pleasure. And your friendship is always welcome. So we're glad to have you too, man. I
appreciate y'all asking me to be on here and everything like that. And I really do enjoy listening to it, and y'all's different perspectives on music and games and everything like that. And it's definitely good. And I really do appreciate being on here.
Thanks. We put a lot of heart and soul into this. And now that you're seeing kind of the back end side of it, obviously it's not as well refined and polished as what the final product ends up being, but it was a project of passion, and we love doing it. And we're glad to, share that experience with close friends. It's been a blast.
Yeah, you've been great. I love hearing your perspective on things, actually talking to you instead of just typing things in chat to troll you. That's been great. But no, I mean, you've seen the list of things that we want to talk about. And if there's any of them you want to come do with us, the door's open. You just got to let us know.
Definitely. If you guys ever need somebody, just let me know and I'll be more than happy to join y'all again.
Yeah, for sure. Will, as far as if anybody wanted to contact you, reach out to you, see the things you're doing, where would they best find you?
Right now, my Twitter and Twitch, even though I feel bad. I haven't streamed in like almost a year now, and basically a year. I do want to get back into it, but my Twitter and Twitch are both BeardedCorvus. Come by. I'm all about talking about games and music. Love it all. It's always fun.
Perfect. Make sure you guys stop by, say hello, and go see the BeardedCorvus. He does have a majestic beard, much like myself. But that's it, guys. We're out of here for now. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Later.